And would you say this is indicative of a general trend throughout the West, that the West may be perhaps being closed down?
Oh yeah, it's been asset stripped. All these sort of eco-fascist sort of friendly policies are all designed round to sort of give sort of big business excuse to do it, you know, what sort of... I mean, if you can't guarantee to have your electric on every day when you're working anymore because of wind farms, I mean, what are you supposed to do? A lot of places, if they have a power cut, you know, what sort of cement works were so earlier, what sort of kilns there, you know, what sort of lime with fire bricks, and if they go cold, and they've only got so many sort of hours before it's all knackered completely and they've got to re-brick a lot, you know, places like that are gonna... It's just not workable.
A lot of production has been moved overseas, and particularly to China. Would you say this is purely a profit agenda, or would you say there's another reason for it?
It's so they can change the money on it. That's the primary objective. Anything to give them an excuse to change money. Like closing all pits down, we import quite a significant amount of coal now, you know, and it's all got money changed on it. It's all crap, it's not good, it's not as good as what we have, but, you know, that sort of modern technology allows you to burn it without sort of killing everything around you with it, you know, sort of get away with that. But why, you know, when we've got our own coal? But they just, I mean, some of it's pretty near the surface, dead easy to get open gassed. I mean, it makes a mess when you're doing it, but it'll heal after you've finished.
So why do you think these resources aren't being taken advantage of?
Well, you've got a fleet of environmentalists around everywhere, haven't you? It's like sort of energy from waste. We could get 10% of UK's energy from sort of burning household rubbish, and probably old fires and stuff like that will get going, you know. I mean, it'll stop all fly tipping problem, you know. You could probably pay somebody 10p a tyre to sort of take them in, you know, sort of actually make waste worth money to burn it. And yeah, it'd be a great scheme. You get cheaper electric, smash the sort of cartel that we have at the moment wide open.
So do you think the people who campaign against these, what you might describe as common sense measures, do you believe they truly understand what they are doing, or are they just being manipulated?
They're basically being manipulated. They think they can bring about anarchy, and that would be a really good idea if there were sort of free for all for everybody and sort of... But, you know, I don't want to go there.
Okay. Bringing it back to the revolutionary point, a lot of people are calling for a revolution at the moment. It's an underground growing movement, but it is one that's becoming more popular. I've got things in mind like We Are Change and Love Police, people who like to have confrontations with the police. What is your opinion of this position of revolution? Do you think it's correct, or do you think people are going about it the wrong way?
They've lost the plot. They've totally lost the plot. Gandhi had the idea, and the only way we can defeat them is to do a Gandhi on them. Sort of everybody sort of cancel your Sky contract and you know, like, don't bother with your mobile phone anymore, and just keep your landline and a computer for your internet connection. Fair enough, but get rid of everything else that you're paying so much a week for or whatever. And if everybody did that, I know it's a big ask, but everybody did that just for 2 months.
So you're of the opinion that doing nothing rather than going out having a confrontation with the police is preferable?
Yeah, well, I've had plenty of practice at it and it doesn't do you any harm. Some people sort of couldn't be without this or without that or whatever, but I mean, we only buy stuff here when we sort of have to get it. We don't sort of buy anything because it's been advertised on TV, and we don't buy anything because we've seen one somewhere and we like one. That was sort of got out of me when I was a kid. I used to sort of... I got to the stage where I didn't like spending money anymore, because when I got stuff, I always ended up disappointed with it, you know. I've been like, not like that all the time since. I mean, I'm sort of well satisfied with my car. I mean, I bought a Kia Picanto 1.0 litre. Well, it's slightly jazzy, it has central locking and stuff like that on it, but no air conditioning or all like that, like everybody expects these days. Well, what you've got to do basically, I mean, to sort of get a true sort of ecologically sort of sustainable economy is to make everything have to last for 30 years. You know, like sort of, so you can get parts for it all the way through. It doesn't mean to say you have to mend it halfway through or whatever, or at even at 7-year intervals or whatever. I mean, like sort of if you got a car, you could sort of send it in when it was 7-year-old and get it all sort of done up as good as new, and then run it another 7 years and then get it done up as good as new again. And you can hand it on to your kids. It's not like sort of rocket science to make stuff properly. They've got the technology to do it. You know, there's no excuse except that they want you to sell your finance on it every 5 years and just like sort of rent it to you. It's never yours.
So would you say people who conform to the throwaway culture in society are almost falling into the trap of the people who are in control of the stock markets and the money changing?
Oh yeah, the like what I mentioned earlier, 10 bob fat cats. They think they're sort of rich people, and you know, it's like Britain. You know, oh, we're a rich country, we can afford this and we can afford like sort of foreign aid. That's what people are like. They're like sort of trapped in this sort of corporate illusion. You know, like what life is supposed to be like. You know. Although I must admit I'm quite fortunate that I've met quite a few people more recently that can see through that. I've basically nothing against people making a lot of money, as just so long as they're employing a lot of people. I mean, if I'm sort of designing a sort of new economic system, I'll have a maximum wage. But if you got your own company and you were employing people full time, you'd get like sort of credits against that, sort of tax credits, so in theory your sort of income could probably double that. No problem, you know, like sort of just for sort of even the smallest place, you know, like sort of as long as you keep everybody going and on decent money and everything else. Well, I mean, there are companies out there that are actually still doing that, but I mean every day they're sort of getting encroached on and undercut, you know. I mean, some now only really survive on the reputation for quality, you know, like sort of they can probably keep going, but there's so many cowboys out there now.
Okay, do you feel these factors and many of the other factors that we have discussed so far have contributed to a downward trend in local farming and the rural community in general, and if so, how?
Well, when I was a lad, there were 1, 2, 3, 4 dairy farms in Chapman. 2 of them had a milk round and they sold it to the other one when they packed in. But I mean, they're all gone now. There's like sort of nobody left doing dairy in Chapman. I mean, they're all talking about giving up. The lads don't want to carry it on. If they had it up at the end of the year, they'll find out they're working like sort of 60, 70 hours a week for sort of below minimum wage, and because they're self-employed, nobody can say anything about it. You know, fair enough, they might get a tax credit or whatever, but I mean, what good's that? You know, what sort of, there's no money in it for sort of small, sort of independent sort of family farming. I mean, you're alright. You're probably now, you're talking about sort of 400 cows before you can even think about sort of being a dairy farm. Yet again, it all hangs on transport costs. You know, I mean, you start to be a small farm and have a big bulk tank and keep it 2 days and just get it like sort of emptied every 2 days, but like sort of now they want to take a 38-ton tanker and sort of fill half of it or whatever right away. So it's really difficult if you sort of on a small scale, and there's not that much money in anything else, although like sort of what seems so strange about it all is that province sales are as good as they've ever been. There isn't a recession in animal food sort of industry.
Right. What do you see as being the end consequence of these things that we're talking about? Do you think the rural community will survive?
It all depends on whether all these people even like sort of got all these stocks and shares sort of piled up think that they can sort of, I mean, biggest threat, I know everybody says how wonderful it is, but biggest threat to sort of rural communities is actually high-speed broadband, because then it just lets anybody move in and sort of trade shares or stock market or whatever, and it'll sort of just, well, I mean, everybody's priced out as it is, but I mean, it'll be 10 times worse when they get fast broadband.
Join us in part 6, where I'll be discussing the current status of the housing market with Gordon.